Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name is Brian, and in this video we're going to be going over the final tournament battle report from the Minnesota tournament that I played at Battleground Cafe. And in this one, I ended up getting paired against one of the Minnesota locals named Richie, and they were playing Khador, and as you can see from the thumbnail image here, Richie ended up dropping Sorscha 1, and I ended up dropping my Lukas list. Now, I've talked about my Lukas list before. I dropped this one instead of Bennett because I think Bennett really tries to utilize a lot of her defense and speed to bully the table a lot, and Richie playing Sorscha, she kind of shuts a lot of that down, so I decided to play Lukas. There's plenty of ways for me to scalpel out a lot of his pieces. The more important thing to talk about here is Richie's list. He ended up dropping Sorscha 1 in no theme, and the list is Sorscha 1 with Behemoth and a Greylord Adjunct rounding out the battle group, Alexia, the Mistress of Witchfire, Dez, Eiryss 1, Glyn Cormier, Grandmaster Gabriel Throne, Harlowe Holdemhigh, Scythe, a Thamarite Archon, Lady Aiyana, and Master Holt, and a unit of Illumination, or Order of Illumination Vigilants. There's 4 points in here I'm missing somewhere, but I can't quite remember what solo it was. Essentially what Richie's doing here is kind of playing one of those old Sorscha Oceans 13 style lists where you're bringing a lot of the high-value solos into the game. I think there's definitely an interesting thing going on here in terms of reacting to the meta a little bit. Archons are very prevalent, and along with that, there's also a lot of heavy-hitting rule-packed solos that are kind of permeating throughout the game right now. And when the lists get smaller, these really impactful solos that are, you know, in this Sorscha list become a lot more relevant. They can start doing a ton of damage to those, and Sorscha has lots of ways to shut down like big heavy ticket solos. You know, you can stationary the Archons and everything, and with the lists getting smaller, you know, if that's the meta you're experiencing, Sorscha also gets a lot better for being able to kind of carve out the pieces to get to a caster. She just has a really ridiculous non-linear threat range, and then when you add guns into that, it makes things extremely dangerous. She definitely is a caster that can reach out and touch people from just about anywhere on the table. So another learning point for me throughout this tournament and filming these things is to be a little bit more attentive of my camera angles. I was a little too weird last time, so I ended up getting it balanced out so it's not so off kilter, but in doing so I ended up there wasn't a whole lot of room on the opposite side of the table for me to be able to set up the camera in a way to kind of raise it up. You know, I just had my small little travel pod with me, so this is kind of what we're sitting at, so I wasn't able to quite show my deployment or Richie's deployment, but you know, and I also think I really don't need to be shooting these in 4K, so that I could probably get a wider angle with 1080p, but that's a different problem for me in the future. So deployment you can kind of suss out based on how I'm moving my models up here. The Trancers are just getting a little bit further forward. I probably could have played them a little more conservatively instead of just kind of giving him something to shoot at, but I would rather give Richie something to shoot at instead of just kind of playing coy and letting him kind of position his units where he needs to. The Death Archons are sitting in the middle because a lot of Richie's units, or a lot of Richie's models are deployed on the lower side of the screen that you can't see, and that's why I've got these failed experiments coming up the side here, because I think against his list I'm going to have to try and keep Lukas safe and really utilize the scenario pressure, because there's a couple scoring elements on here that he just won't be able to get into, and based on where the rest of his army is, those failed experiments are really going to wreak havoc on anything that even gets close to that zone. And the Vindicators, Vanguard, and Liberator are really just kind of hanging out in the middle. I have the Liberator on the far, or on the upper side of the screen, where the Vindicator, or the Vanguard's in the middle, and he's spaced out just enough to be able to shield guard for both of the Death Archons. That's kind of why I put one in here instead of having a second Liberator, was just so that I could get that double shield guard business to kind of keep these Archons safe. I think people definitely are using shooting to try and, like, good high power shooting from long range to get these guys down, and just having that one double shield guard can really throw things off for people. So you could see Harlowe kind of stuck his face into the screen here, and he was shooting at a trancer that was in the forest there, and ended up getting poltergeist a couple times from missing. So that was a fun time for me. But then I believe it might have been Scythe that ended up taking out the trancer there. So I think what Richie's doing right now is trying to just figure out where he needs to position his army to try and make the most out of his next turns. Those Death Archons can threat a very long distance, and with having Lukas hanging around, Liberator on the far side that can just run up through the forest if he needs to, I'm able to kind of pull some of his stuff around too a little bit. And with Richie having like high value solos, he really doesn't want to lose them from anything. So I think Glyn came up and tried to take a shot at one of the Death Archons, but then I shield guarded that one because I didn't want her pull gun to get him any further. And then the Vigilantes come up, and they're shooting through the burning ash clouds into the Death Archon as well. But I believe they only do a couple points here. Not a whole lot going on in terms of trying to take him down. I don't think the dice really showed up for Richie on that one. So the clouds here, like Richie has a Greylord adjunct for eyeless sight. Maybe the 4-point solo that I'm missing is the Koldun Lord. Maybe he brought that one so he could eyeless sight something else, but I'm not 100% sure. And he hasn't gotten back to me on Discord about what's in his list. So he'll just have to say that himself. Or if you pay attention to any of the Khador Discord discussions, I think Richie's in there really hanging his hat on this list and this style of play. But with him having the ability to see through clouds quite easily, it's not, it looks like a Koldun Lord is the 4-point solo that I missed because he's just hanging out up there. Anyways, geez. So there's a lot of movement on Richie's part. He has to be really careful about where he puts things here. And at this point, he moves up Sorscha and puts up, or he tries to Tempest something or Freezing Grip the Death Archon, and just realizes right then and there that this is not a good move because he Freezing Grips that Death Archon, and then it's just like, 2 aiming Vindicators can take her out, and a TK and a Disintegrate from Lukas just wipes her off the game or off the table. So I had said, I don't want you to lose this way, because Richie's had a rough go of it this tournament. He's been really wanting to try this list and put the theory to test. And his first round opponent had immunity to cold for some reason. I can't remember what it was that did it. Maybe it was like Elias Healer or something like that, a retribution thing, or it was Gorshade 4. That probably makes more sense. But then in the second round, he got paired into a Kolgrima Storm of the North. One of the lists was there, so he got shut out of that game as well. He had to drop, I think he brought Vlad 2 or something like that as the off list for this. But then when he got to me, I was just like, okay, well, we'll do this. And I wanted to make sure that he didn't lose Sorscha like that, because he was very excited to just kind of put this list through its paces, and I wanted to make sure he was afforded that opportunity instead of just ripping Sorscha off the table because of a greedy Freezing Grip play. So I think at this point it's really Richie's kind of positioned everything where he's wanted to, so the turn comes back over to me, and I've got there's not a whole lot of distance between me and this between Richie's army and this Death Archon, so there's a lot of different movement shenanigans I could do, or some shooting from the Vindicators that could probably pull off the front screen of these Vigilantes. So I'm still kind of like learning how to play the Death Archons as I go through this game. This is still only the second time I've ever played them, and the first being, like maybe 4 hours ago. So I go up with the Death Archon, and I'm able to clip the front 3 Vigilants, and then I'm also in range to get into Glyn Cormier. And after swinging on them, I don't hit Glyn or the Vigilante, which is good for me. Or no, they both tough for some reason. I think what's his face? Gabriel Throne gave them tough So after that, I'm just able to swing again with Annihilator and wipe them off the table. So now I'm loaded up on corpses. Mortal Fear is up on that Death Archon. And then I've just kind of taken a huge amount of force off of Richie's side of the table. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but his list is really, really small, and those models were something that could try and help mitigate the clouds and keep Lukas a little bit more on the honest side. But now with a bunch of those gone and one Death Archon up in Richie's business with really no true loss on my part, it's looking pretty good for him. Next up, I move up a Trancer, and I think she was attempting to hit one of the other... I don't know if it was another Vigilant behind her or behind Glyn. Oh no, it was Eiryss 1. That's who's in the trench here. So I tried to go in, and I was just one short on being able to connect with her. That would have been a really good pull off the table, is just to get her out of there. But unfortunately, it just didn't connect. So the other Death Archon's trying to stay safe behind the woods. I think I ended up towing him into the woods, which might not have been like the greatest idea, because I was like, oh, I can just tow him in there and then TK and then maybe charge out. But I probably could have left him outside of the woods to make that happen. And then the Vindicators kind of close in around the objective, and Lukas comes up to try and stay safe behind them. And the other Vindicator, just after being TK'd, is going to be aiming and shooting. And I think he's trying to get into Richie's Greylord Adjunct that's back there. And by taking the Adjunct off the table, it means that Eyeless Sight is going with it. And I think the Adjunct ends up... maybe the Adjunct wasn't one that got hit there. I think it was just some Vigilance, and then I was able to clip Sorscha and put some damage on her. And then the next Vindicator, who I guess got TK'd up to that position, is also shooting in hopes of being able to try and clip Eiryss 1. I think for this one, I just went for the straight shot and tried to drift off of her, because I think a Withering Humor boosted POW 7 should do pretty decent against her, but it doesn't end up doing what I want it to, and Eiryss is still on the table. So let's see what's going on now. Richie's kind of at this point where he's lost a bunch, and it might not seem like it. Like I said, losing some Vigilance and Glyn isn't a huge deal, and probably some other parts or pieces in the back. But I think Harlowe Holdemhigh might have went down also to one of the Vindicator shots. I just can't quite remember. It's like I said, it's unfortunate that I've got this camera angle, but I'm learning with these mobile tournament battle reports. So I think what Richie's trying to do right now is he's in panic mode. He needs to not let me have more turns. And the reason being is just because I'm able to do so much to his army since it's so small, and I have so many tools to be able to kind of work his army around and do what I want with it and position mine where I need to. Plus, Vindicators are extremely efficient for what they come with. They're like, I think the Reckoner is drooling over the Vindicators, because they shoot amazingly and they fight really well too. So there's just there's not a whole lot that they don't do. So I think what Richie's trying to math out right now, and this is more of a sad moment on my part, is Lukas is within what is it? He's within within blast of an AoE for a Tempest, and Richie's getting all over the table. You kind of saw the camera swing around a little bit, because he's like trying to measure all this stuff out and be really, really accurate. And we're breaking super steamroller rules by adding a bunch of proxy bases, but honestly, I'm not too. That's not a rule that I really care too much about when I'm playing my games. I think if people are trying to map out something worthwhile and trying to get back into a game, I'm put as many widgets on the table as you want to. It doesn't matter to me. So Sorscha comes up here. She's tossing out a Tempest onto the Vindicator. The hope here is just to kind of knock the Vindicator down so that she can see Lukas, and then feet to make sure that she can stationary him, which I think is what's happened now. And also feel like she might have taken a gunshot or something and boosted it. I can't quite remember exactly what Richie's full stack went into, but now he's just kind of maneuvering the rest of his shooting around to get into the places that he's planned out. The orange proxy base, the intention is that it's going to become Alexia, the Mistress of Witchfire, I believe is what her full name is. Yeah, Mistress of the Witchfire. So there's some shooting that comes in to try and take out the Death Archon and the Trancer that's sitting there engaged with Eiryss. And I think it might have been, I can't remember exactly who did it. This is another problem with recording these games like this, is I haven't taken any notes or anything to really pay attention to who's doing what here. So Eiryss comes up, and with Lukas being stationary and knocked down, she's hitting super easy and shaking his focus, which is a big thing here for her. Next up, Alexia comes over, and she's loaded up on souls from all of those Vigilantes dying, so we're kind of like in the Iron Kingdom's version of recycling, where my Death Archons were getting the corpses, and then Alexia was getting the souls. So she ends up making a few Thrall warriors. The gist here is to just try and find a way to where all of these Thrall warriors are able to, well, not all of them, but Richie's trying to figure out how he's going to get as many Thrall warriors onto Lukas as he possibly can. They're only like POW 10 weapon masters, but that's still that's enough. They might not even be weapon masters. They might just be POW 12 dorks or POW 10 dorks. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a long time since I've put a Thrall on the table. At any rate, they're just doing damage, and that's what Richie needs to do, is just try and dig deep, since he has a smaller footprint list and there are just some places that things can't get to. He just wants to try and maximize everything here. So I've been helping him out, trying to make sure that these guys can get into where they need to get in, and the first one charges off and connects with him, of course, and does a decent amount of damage to him. And then next up comes Behemoth, who is taking the place of these are some extreme Juggernaut feat or extreme Destroyer feat, and I think Richie's Behemoth has just not had a very good life. So this is Behemoth right now, and I think during the game Richie was really like felt like he was going to be running out of gas to be able to do what he wanted to do here, and had also forgot that Behemoth was there because he was just feat. So then once he recognized, or maybe I reminded him that Behemoth was hanging out, he was like, oh yeah, I still got Behemoth shots, I can do this. So then the Behemoth shot goes in and connects. I think he put the damage onto the Vindicator just to try and do something there, and then that blast damage ended up getting the Thrall warrior. Either that or the damage, he might have shot Lukas, I can't quite remember. So Dez walks up and shoots the objective because Richie figures he needs to get the objective out of the way to get one of these other Thrall warriors to connect. So Throne comes in and shoots, and I believe he might be stirring the blood on something. I don't think he can do that to Thralls. Maybe I'm just like misremembering the game. But the next Thrall warrior comes in and ends up doing enough damage to just take Lukas off the table. So I'm sure many of you Crucible Guard players are sitting here screaming at me the whole time this assassination run was going on. And yes, I 100% forgot that Lukas has rapid healing. So for every time he had gotten shot by something or had damage done to him, I should have been healing that D3. And I think it might have gotten impactful depending on how those D3s went, because Richie was running out of steam in order to be able to kind of get any more stuff to Lukas. So there were a lot of hits, lots of dice could have been rolled. I definitely could have positioned a little bit better. Like, I've played Sorscha 1 a whole bunch, and I know what her assassination threats are, and I just was not playing the best that I could have. I also could have probably put some clouds in front of me, since Richie's access to Eyeless Sight is a little bit lessened right now. So then that would have made it so that the Thralls wouldn't have been able to quite get into me. Lots of ways I could have really changed the outcome of this game, especially, paying attention to my rules in terms of the rapid healing. There were also some more cute things that Richie could have done here that he didn't notice until the game was over. Sorscha positioned in such a way that the Trancer was not hit by the feet, so she was not stationary, then that meant that the Thamarite Archon could have shot the Trancer and then done a Death Driver shot to have the Trancer then move and then smite the Vindicator into Lukas, and then that would have given Sorscha the ability to not have to cast Tempest in order to do what she needed to do, and probably put another hand cannon shot. There's just a lot of strange vectors that this list can get you from, and if you're not paying attention to any of that, it can definitely catch you off guard. So at the end of the day, I ended up going 0-3 at this tournament, and I think a lot of people would be upset by that if it were them. You drive 3.5 hours to go to an event, and you end up not winning a single game. It could definitely deflate someone, but for me, I feel like I've walked away from this tournament with the best experience out of everyone who ended up showing up. People kind of brought lists they thought would work out or know would work out and got to execute them to their expected results. And that's fine and everything, but for me, I got to take 2 lists that I've never played before in a faction I haven't touched in a while, and I got to play against players who were much more skilled than I was. Almost every single one of these players that I hit in the tournament is a WTC player, and that, especially in like the first game, of course I was playing against rusty WTC players, but nonetheless they're still quite skilled in the game. In my first game, I got close to closing that game out if I had just played my list a little bit more efficiently, and in round 2 I got to play into a horrible matchup and actually get to a point where I was not too far off from being able to win that game either. It didn't look like it when you go back and watch the report, but with my opponent only having 8 minutes left and pulling out an assassination, even though it was only with like 1 model, if I would have just played a little tighter, I probably could have gotten to a point where that game would be a little bit more on the razor's edge instead of just a blowout. And in this third game, I was in an advantaged position, and I just had kind of forgot that Sorscha had the kind of threat that she did. But I still feel like that just has given me, with people not going in for these real deep assassinations as much as they used to, it's nice to get that reminder that these things still exist and to be extremely cognizant of your opponent's threat ranges and not play so mechanically where you're like, well, this my Warcaster needs to get up to this point, and then when that happens, then the rest of the game flows. You need to always be really attentive to what your opponents are doing. So even though I went 0-3, I definitely feel like I left this tournament the winner. Not only did I get tons of experience against experienced players, but I also got to meet a bunch of new cool people that I hadn't met before. Not a single person that I played against today had I played against in an event prior to this. I think I've maybe seen or interacted with them in passing at previous events in the before pandemic times, and there was only one that I'd really met before there, other than Ethan, of course, who came with me. So it was a really great event. Matt put on a good show, and the Battleground Cafe is a really fun venue. Not only is it really big and they have like the best and easiest way to get your drinks and stuff. You just have like this huge like fridge with a ton of different selections. They even have ice cream there for whatever reason, and you can just go up there into their coolers, grab it, and then go to the counter, pay for it, and be done. And a lot of other stores, you kind of have to go up to the person and tell them what you want, and then they go get it type of thing. There's also a meat market next door to the place that makes sandwiches. I didn't get to take advantage of it because I am on a very strict diet, but it was something that had I known it was there, I would have not packed myself a lunch and instead just went with that. But again, a great time. I really enjoyed making this series of battle reports. I know that I need to work on a lot with them, but when you're kind of carrying around like a huge expensive camera, you don't want someone to be tripping over your power cords and your tripods and stuff while they're walking by tables. So I tried to be really I wanted to make sure that camera was very close to me and not at risk of ever falling. So maybe I might go ahead and try and bring out a little bit more of a humble setup instead of a 4K camera, and try and record these a little bit more wide. And people have given me a lot of feedback on what to include on these videos. So I'm looking forward to the next event that I go to, whenever that is, and trying to create another one of these series and improve upon it to give you all something fun and exciting to watch. Hopefully the games will be a little bit more interesting on my side for the next tournament, because I think I'm probably going to be taking Crucible Guard for a while to my competitive events. There's just so many things you can do with them, and you don't need to have 120s in your list to have a good pairing. So this is something that I'll probably be bringing around again. Otherwise, thanks for sticking with this. I know three videos in a row to kind of see the outcome is a little bit on the long side, but I think this worked out better than trying to put like a 1-2 hour video out there for everyone to watch. But I am happy to be back playing Warmachine again, and I think Ethan and I will get around to getting some battle reports out there sooner or later. There's just a whole lot going on with this whole moving into a house thing and trying to raise a teething puppy who wants to do nothing but bite my hands. So thanks again for watching. I'm super happy to be back and be playing, and I think I've said that 3 times now, so I'm just going to end this video because I have a problem with transitioning to ends, and that's something that I don't think will ever change.